and that type of photography lends itself perfectly to that, because that's exactly what happens when you're creating an image like that. You're diving into that world and you're creating, like almost like an alternate reality that comes straight out of your imagination. Which is what I love about toy photography. It's like lighting a toy in a certain way, to give it some character or to insinuate something, that's, and the whole practical aspect. I think maybe it's because we live in such a digital world where everything happens on screens all the time, whether it's smartphones or iPads or computers, and, that just the physicality of actually moving that model around, trying out different things and then creating that world, that in itself is, it's like, it's literally, as an adult, that is a bit like being a kid again, just playing with some more expensive toys like cameras and stuff.
For sure. I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, especially with the toys. It's like I feel like a lot of people think that the golden age of toys was like the 80s and 90s, but I wasn't paying attention to it back then. I just see what's being created now, and it's pretty mind blowing. There's toys for a lot of toys are being created for adults now, just because the whole nostalgia. Nostalgia is huge for me in toy photography, but that's why people collect toys. But I will tell you, when I first started shooting stormtroopers, I saw the movies, but I was never what I would consider a big fan. And so the images that I was creating, they didn't I didn't feel like I was attached to them like emotionally. Um, they were fun, but they weren't impacting me personally. And then I had a milestone moment when I went to that same park, and I decided I wanted to try and capture an image of a stormtrooper like falling off this cliff, which was a big rock. With the idea was him falling off. There was another stormtrooper hanging over the edge of the cliff, like trying to catch him, and to make that as real as possible, I wanted to have like I imagined if I fell off a cliff or slipped off a cliff, there would be rocks, that maybe loose gravel or something that caused me to slip off, and some of those loose rocks would come tumbling as I was falling in the air. And so all this is done with wire. So I suspended the falling stormtrooper with wire off the cliff, so he was falling in midair. And when I was shooting the scene, I use a remote shutter release because it's just me, and I can be at the set creating whatever effects while firing off the camera. So I was closer to him, just out of frame, and I had a bunch of pebbles in my hand, and I was throwing them into the scene as I was shooting. And the thing about still photography, obviously, if you're shooting at a high shutter speed, you can't tell that the rocks are going this way. They look like they're going down. Based on the story that's being told, you just immediately make that connection that those rocks are falling with him. But the big milestone moment for me, besides that being probably the first time that I did something midair or that looked like it was in midair, was that I was actually telling a story with those stormtroopers. And it impacted me when I was doing it, and when I saw the finished image, and I could tell that that it also had more impact on the viewers because they love the story. It was a fun story. It's not complex. When I say tell a story, obviously you're doing it in a single frame, so it's not going to be a novel, but it's going to be something that makes you feel something, or something that's happening. That that's what I consider telling a story in a single image. So I like to tell the story that when I was growing up, I had two brothers, and we'd always go on family road trips with my mom and dad, and we had a station wagon, which probably almost every family in America had. I'm not sure about the UK, but
Same
we
here.
had one.
Same,
Oh yeah.
same here. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so for me and my brothers, the choice location would be in the very back of the station wagon, where you had all the space. It's illegal to ride back there now, I think, unless there's seat belts. But you'd have luggage, you'd have blankets, and you'd bring a few toys. And for me, it was in there where my imagination would run wild, and I could just imagine like monsters battling each other inside the sleeping bag, which would be a cave. And then the realization one day was that I basically just traded in the back of that station wagon for my studio. And instead of just playing with the toys, I'm now capturing it in photos. But the same storytelling and make believe is what kind of drives it all. So I think that's pretty cool.